Of the day and the sacrifices made by a lot of brave men and women 18 years ago today. What's important to realize, who were a big part of the casualties on 9/11? And we think about people on the ground. Who were some of the people who perished in that day? Who? Firefighters, EMTs, police, first responders. Many of these folks, when we start talking about organized labor, these are very strong union and fraternal groups. Estimates are, we had 200 to 500 people in those professions the first day of the attacks actually perished. Guys, here's some interesting kind of reflection for you. The plane that went down in Shanksville flew over St. Francis University. So where you're sitting right now, you're sitting on territory that the people who brought that Flight 93 down in Shanksville flew over us that day. I was sharing my Business 101 class that day that when I came to work that morning, I don't know how many of you have memories of that day. When I came to work that morning, somebody in the conference room already had a video on of the first tower with a smoldering hole through it. I was watching live when the second plane hit the Second World Trade Center. And I can honestly tell you that I don't know if I've ever had a feeling like that in my body in my entire life. It was like realizing at that moment in time, the world had changed. We were actually in completely at war. I think the interesting part for me is when I talk with people in your generation, that was really a defining moment for the world that you live in today and the way things have changed for us. And so the reason we look back and we honor the day, number one, is to honor those who sacrificed and lost, people who put themselves selflessly in harm's way to try to do the right thing, but also to realize that the world we live in today is due in large part to the events of that day. So as you're going through your day today, I encourage you, if you have a moment to do some personal reflection, to do that. If you know somebody who had experiences from that day, it's good to speak with them. And I think it's also good for us as people of all places, people from all around the world, to see if there are ways we can avoid having another day like that ever. Not that that's a realistic goal, but one we should still aspire to. Guys, the way our class is going to run today, we're going to start off by reviewing Chapter 2, and it's going to be an example of what you might see for questions on an exam. After that, we're going to talk about our guest speaker. I don't know if you remember, we have a guest speaker coming on Friday. We have a gentleman named James Lamont. He's from the United Mine Workers of America. He no longer works for the mine workers, but he was a union organizer. He's an international representative of the United Mine Workers of America. And so we're prepared to welcome him and ask questions. After we get through our review today, I'm going to be showing you a video on the history of the United Mine Workers of America. The reason I'm showing you this, I'd like you to be prepared to have dialogue and ask him questions. When you meet Jim, he's a very approachable guy. He's got some great stories, and he's very frank. If you ask him a question, he will give you a very honest answer. I've assured him we're not going to record his session, so I'm hoping he'll tell us some of the really good stories about his organizing days. But he's a trip, and he tells it straight. So I'm looking forward to his presence in our classroom. So I hope you will be here on Friday to welcome him. But we're going to start off on Chapter 2. Now keep in mind, guys, our interactions in the class from here on out will determine if we're going to have a take-home test or if we're going to do one in class. So I encourage you, if you have not participated, spoken up, or engaged, I'm asking you to do so. All right, guys, we're starting off. We're going to do one side of the room at a time, and we're actually going to work our way around the room. So we're going to start, one person in each row will answer a question. So we'll be starting here for question 1, question 2. We'll be going by row to see if you can get these questions. No points on the line here, but just an idea of seeing what might be on the test. Starting over here with row 1, true or false? Most factory employees within the Industrial Revolution would be considered skilled labor. Is that true or false, row 1?
False.
That is false. What kind of labor would we consider them to be?
Unskilled labor.
You got it. Sorry that you're the only guy in row 1, but an act that is not inherently illegal, but that can cause financial harm to another person or persons. Is that a civil conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy, a yellow dog conspiracy, or an unfair labor practice conspiracy?
Civil conspiracy.
That is correct. It is a civil conspiracy. And the criminal conspiracy doctrine was something that got outlawed because it was used as a way to completely bully unions in the early days. Row 2, over here on this side of the room, which of the following did not impede workers from organizing? Was it jury trials, injunctions, employer unions, or the NLRA? The National Labor Relations Act. Which is your guess? Which did not hurt unions in organizing? Take a guess. What do you think, guys? It is correct. The National Labor Relations Act was actually the law that allowed unions to organize, and it was basically legalizing unions. Jury trials were oftentimes used to apply conspiracy doctrine. Injunctions made unions go back to work. Employer unions, things like the Knights of Labor, for example, really reduced the bargaining power of unions. We're going to row 2 on my side now. A contract requiring a worker to refrain from organizing. Is that a black dog contract, a yellow dog contract, a blue dog contract, or a non-compete clause? What do you think, guys?
B.
It is B. It's a yellow dog contract. I'm not talking about Labradors. I'm talking about unions. We're going back over to this side of the room. Which law attempted to restrict monopolies? Row 3. Was it the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Taft-Hartley Act, the Clayton Act, or the Sarbanes-Oxley Act? Yeah, absolutely. And even if you didn't know that was the law, what would have cued you off?
Antitrust.
You got it, because that's exactly the nature of antitrust. Row 3 on my side of the room. What union did President Reagan effectively break in the 1980s? Watch the video about it. What union did President Reagan break in the 80s? Involves public safety. You're close. I'm thinking about flying objects. What union? Wasn't the flight attendants. It was the aircraft or the air controllers, the traffic controllers. All right, we're going back over to this side of the room. We're going to row 4. This union was the first successful organized labor group in the U.S. Was it the AFL, the United Mine Workers of America, the CIO, or the KOL? What was the first one? It actually was the Knights of Labor. Remember. And we're going to be asking some more questions about the Knights of Labor. We're going back to our side now. KOL, the Knights of Labor, encouraged all activities except what? Was it political action, labor management cooperation, voluntary arbitration, or strikes? Think about the nature of that union.
I'm going to just make a guess and say strikes.
You're absolutely correct. Why would they have been against strikes? For anybody, what was the nature of the Knights of Labor? Were they truly an employee union or not? No, they encouraged cooperation between labor and management, so they were against strikes. All right, and this might give you the answer to the next question. We're going to the back row. Sorry, Todd, you're all by yourself on this one. Why did the Knights of Labor ultimately fail?
Because I guess they couldn't stop strikes.
Well, they couldn't stop strikes, but the nature of the relationship, if you allow labor and management to be in the same club, you effectively don't really have a union. So that's really what kind of played them down. And what's interesting, too, these guys started off as a secret society. Doesn't that look like a sinister symbol? Like that's something you'd see in like one of the Harry Potter movies or something. It would be on a gate that would open a doorway to another dimension or something. All right, we're going back to the last row. Sorry, Rhiannon, you're the only guy on this side. Which of these issues was key to the Haymaker riot? Is it the 8-hour workday? Was it pay? Was it benefit? Or was it lunch breaks? What started the riot? You say A? You're correct. All right, true or false, going back to row 1 on the opposite side of the room. True or false, the AFL mainly represented unskilled workers. Is that true or false?
That's false. It's the CIO.
Very good. Well done. Okay, going back to row 1 over on this side. True or false, the AFL believed in communist/socialist principles.
That's false.
That is false. What kind of principles did they agree in? Like, what were they all about? They were a pragmatist union. They were all about capitalist issues. Better pay, better benefits. Row 2 on the opposite side of the room. Which of these events swayed the public to support unions? Was it the Homestead riots, the Haymaker riots, the demise of the KOL, or the end of the Civil War? Which one of these really got people on board with unions? I'll give you a hint. Andrew Carnegie. Correct, the Homestead riots, because basically we had unarmed protesters who were being taken down by a private police force in one of Andrew Carnegie's steel mills, and the public sentiment was, this is not acceptable. The working person should have some support. Going back over to this side, row 2, which of these events is most associated with Labor Day in the U.S.? Was it the Homestead Incident, the Haymaker Riots, World War II, or the Pullman Strike?
Is it D?
It is D. Very good. The railroad strike. All right, going back to the opposite side of the room. Which of these unions supported socialist ideals? Was it the IWW, the CIO, the KOL, or the AFL? Use your process of elimination on this one. Any guesses? No electric shocks will be applied for wrong answers. What do you think?
B.
Good guess, but it was actually A. Remember, the Knights of Labor were basically all about bettering people. They were all about cooperation between employers and employees. The CIO was all about unskilled labor, people wanting to get raises. AFL was all about skilled labor. The IWW, by process of elimination, would have been a good answer, but they were also espousing socialist principles. Going back to this side of the room, what agreements did unions make during World War II? What were their big statements? What did the unions say about their behavior during World War II? What would they not do?
No strikes.
They would not go on strike. They basically said that we are going to not go on strike. I would keep this in mind too. The other thing they agreed to were very minimal wage increases because they wanted to participate in the war effort and not cost the government money because all production had shifted to the war. We're going back over to the left side. If an employee doesn't need to be a member of a union to work at a facility, that employer, do they have a closed shop, an open shop, a union shop, or an independent shop?
B.
They do. They have an open shop. If they required you to be in the union, what kind would they have, Elliot?
Closed.
You got it. All right, moving over to my side of the room, an employer acting in a parental way. Is that paternalism, maternalism, or materialism, chauvinism, or existentialism? Somebody's acting parental. What's your guess, guys? Don't overthink it.
I feel like the
It is A, because paternalism equals parent. Very good guess. Well done.
No, I knew what it is.
All right, Todd, we're back to you again. What form of currency is associated with the company store? Do you know? Anybody? Can anybody help Todd out? What's when we say the form of currency? What do we call it? With the company store, it's not dollars. It is. It's scrip. And by the way, guys, here's a picture of scrip. This was actually from a mining company in Kentucky. Check it out. You got a coupon book. And why was scrip such a bad idea? Because it wasn't real currency. All right, here's a complex one for Raina. The blank broke off from the blank to better represent unskilled labor. Did the AFL break off from the CIO? Did the CIO break off from the AFL? Did the KOL break off from the CIO, or did the CIO break off from the KOL?
I say the AFL broke off from the CIO.
You had it reversed. It was the CIO broke off from the AFL.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
but you were close. You were close. Yes, sir.
Then didn't they rejoin after that?
You might be asking a question that applies to a later question, Adam. All right, but it's a good observation. All right, we're going back to our first row here on the opposite side of the room. Which strike tactic is most associated with the CIO? Is it picket lines, sit-down strikes, violent strikes, or political advocacy?
sit-down strikes.
Love it. Very good. And by the way, I know some of you guys referencing your notes. Feel free to do so. Going back to our front row over here, two-tier wage systems ensure higher pay for newer employees. Is that true or false?
I think that's true.
It's actually false. And the reason they negotiate a two-tier wage system, it's a tricky question. It means basically the union is saying we're already entrenched here. Okay, employer, we know that we're charging you high prices. If you will continue to pay our wages, we'll say our new hires will come in at a lower rate. So typically speaking, a two-tier wage system does not benefit for newer employees. Could it possibly? Yes, but typically no. All right, back to row 2 on the opposite side of the room. The first president of the AFL-CIO, was it Walter Reuther, John Lewis, Randy Fry, or George Meany? It is George Meany. Isn't that the best name ever for a boss? You work for Mr. Meany. Like, you know, my wife works for a radiation oncologist, and this guy literally gives people electrical treatments. I swear to God, his name is Dr. Shocker. It's like if you're born with the name Dr. Shocker, you're going to work with electricity. Just like Bernie Madoff, the biggest criminal in history, his last name really is Madoff. What? You can't make this stuff up. And that's our quiz, guys. That is our quiz for today in terms of getting you prepared for the exam. These are pretty good examples of the kind of questions I will ask. Keep in mind, if we do this as a take-home, there may be some short answer sections to answer questions like what was the Union's behavior during World War II? What was the Knights of Labor fatal flaw? Those are questions we would be potentially asking. Before we move on today, any questions or comments? Sir?
So if it's take home, do we not get the, are you going to email us the study guide part?
Oh, I'll email you the study guide regardless. So, actually, let me rephrase that. You've been taking good notes. I don't know if you.
Oh, no, I think.
Here's what I would encourage you. Keep the conversation up. That's what I would encourage you. It will be beneficial for you. Other questions? Other questions or comments, guys? Sir?
Is that review in campus?
It is not yet, but when we get to the point of the test, it will be. I'll actually email it to you guys. Other questions? Okay. Guys, before we watch the video we're going to watch today, and it is substantial, and I'm going to ask you to give it your complete attention. So when I fire up the video, I'm going to ask you to close your laptops and put your phones away. Till then, guys, this guy's name is Jim Lamont. I really do want to show him a nice time when he's here because he's a great guy, and he's taken time out of his day job to come here and be with us. He actually used to work for the United Mine Workers, now he works for the Mine Safety Health Administration. So his day job is making sure that mines, the industry he used to work in, is safe for people who are currently working in them. So I want you to be ready to ask questions. What we're going to watch now, I don't often do this, guys, but this video is actually a propaganda video produced by the mine workers themselves. But it does a pretty good job of giving you a history of the mine workers. Of course, the mine workers broke off originally from the CIO back in the, I guess that would have been the 1940s. I have to go back to my own notes. But it comes down to the idea that they were an independent union. They are now back to being affiliated with the AFL-CIO. So when we get ready to watch this, guys, I'm asking you to sit back, relax, enjoy, and think about some good questions you might want to ask Jim. So give me a second here, guys. I'm going to stop the recording.